Hey, mythology lovers, how are you? Uh, Welcome to another video. Oh, my dragon fell on the floor. Uh, it's mythology dude again here. And let me push this back a little bit. Anyway, in today's, welcome again. I have to apologize for the smoky image. I don't really know what's causing that. I tried wiping the lens with lens paper. Doesn't seem to be helping. I have to work on that. I have to look up what to do about haziness, foggy imagery on iPhone images and videos. So anyway, in this video, I thought I'd tackle one of my favorite areas of legend and myth, and that's stories having to do with King Arthur and his knights. And there's a lot of different sources of King Arthur and his knights. The most famous are what's called the Romances. And the main architect of the Arthurian Romance is said to be a French poet that goes back to the 12th century, late 12th century. And what's meant by romance is not necessarily love stories, although love could be involved. I'm thinking more, it's a type of trope where one of Arthur's knights goes off on an adventure, and he goes through, he almost loses his life by going on this adventure, but he winds up in like an enchanted world and meets all kinds of interesting people, maybe rescues a woman that he winds up marrying, and winds up bringing something of value to King Arthur's court because of his deeds, and he creates honor for himself. Usually these stories involve enchanted faraway lands, where things are different. Anyway, so the main architect of this type of Arthurian story is a Frenchman by the name of Chretien De Troyes. Not really sure how to pronounce his name, but anyway, let me move this guy for a second. He wrote a series of Arthurian romances. I have a few here in English. They've all been translated into English, but these books are really wonderful versions. This is the story of Perceval, or the story of the Grail. This is actually the oldest version of the Grail. Unfortunately, Chretien died before he finished it. My favorite story is this one, Yvain, or The Knight with the Lion. And then there's the story of Lancelot. This is the oldest version that you'll find. The illicit affair Lancelot has with Guinevere, the queen and the wife of Arthur. And he wrote a couple of others too, but these are the ones I read, and this is by far my favorite, Yvain, or The Knight with the Lion. There's even a German version of this, but the version I'm going to tell is the one I was familiar the first time when I first read it many years ago. It's the Welsh version, and it's Howes. And I talked about this book on my video on Celtic mythology, on books on Celtic mythology. It's from the Mabinogion, and it's a much shorter version. And this is the version I was first familiarized myself with the story, and it's very dear to me. And actually, I read it not directly from an English translation of the Mabinogion, but I read it. This is the great Welsh book of myths and legends, but I read it as a secondhand account in one of those books I've often talked about, the Enchanted World, a series of 21 books of myths and legends from around the world by Time Life. I've talked about those books several times. And anyway, so I'll tell that story. Now, in the original French version by Chretien, it's called Yvain, or the story, or The Knight with the Lion. And it's a little longer and a little more involved. In the Welsh version, the story goes like this. Owen is sitting, that's the Welsh version of the knight's name, Owain. An anglicized version is Owen. He's sitting with King Arthur, and they're relaxing. And one of the knights tells this very interesting story about that he went on, and Owain had to go on it. So rather than retell the first knight's story, let me tell you what Owain went through. So Owain goes on this adventure where he looks for this forest and this clearing, and he comes across this this sort of lord of the woods, and he asks this lord for adventure, and he points him in the right direction, and Owain comes across this clearing in the forest, and there's this beautiful little fountain with a marble slab, and on this marble slab is a silver cup, and held to this marble slab with a little silver chain and a little fountain next to it. And what Owain does, he puts a little water from the fountain in the silver cup and tosses it on the marble slab. And suddenly there's this huge loud storm that comes, thunder and lightning, and a big flood of rain. And just when it was letting up, he sees in the distance a knight approaching him, and this knight was all dressed in black armor. And this knight didn't come to talk. This knight was poised to fight Owain. And apparently he had entered a realm which was sort of private and protected. So this knight's job was to protect whoever invades this. Apparently these people are like, kill first, ask questions later. So the two, Owain is an esteemed knight, so he's not going to shy away from a joust and a battle. So the two of them joust. They both get knocked off the horse. Now, usually in medieval chivalry, if you both get knocked off your horse, or one gets knocked off, the other horseman is obliged to dismount, and the two of them continue to fight with swords. And in this particular battle, I believe they were both knocked off, and they fought brutally. But Owain eventually struck a mortal blow to the other knight. He cleaved his helmet, and the blade went right into his skull and into the brain. So the other knight knew that this was a mortal blow. So immediately he jumped on his horse, and he started running with his horse, galloping back to the castle, and where he came from. And Owain is like, "No, you're not getting away from me. I want to know who you are and why you attacked me." And so Owain follows him on his horse, and the knight made it into the gate of the castle, and Owain didn't quite make it. What happened is that when he came in through the first part of the wall, okay, the castle has this really thick wall, and there's the outside of the wall that has what's called a portcullis, which is this gate that comes down. And what happens is that the gate came down in such a way that it cut his horse in half. It came down right behind Owain. If it would have come down any sooner, it would have cut Owain in half. But instead, it cut his poor horse in half. And then the inside of the gate, the inside of the wall, that portcullis comes down, and you trap who's ever in there, So who's ever in there is trapped. They can't get out, and they can't get further into the town that the castle was protecting. And what happens is that there's this very beautiful woman named Lynette who notices Owain stuck in there, and she knows exactly what happened. That this guy stumbled upon their kingdom and was attacked by the lord of the castle, and she wants to help him, because she has an immediate liking to Owain, and she knows that he's very chivalrous, and he was only protecting himself. And not only that, but now that night that Owain killed, he's not dead yet, actually, is actually the lord of that castle, or the earl, whatever. And his job is to be the protector of the castle and that kingdom. And so she finds an opportunity that Owen is a stronger knight because he defeated him. Maybe he could marry the countess of the castle, and that's what this Welsh version is called. It's not, not no. I'm sorry. The French version is Yvain, or the Knight with the Lion. I'm telling the Welsh version, which is called the Countess of the Fountain, or the Lady of the Fountain, or the Lady of the Well. It goes by different names. But anyway, so Luned wants to eventually hook up this knight who killed the Baron with the Countess, and be the new protector and an even stronger protector of the castle and the land. But she knows that the townspeople are out for blood because this knight that's imprisoned in the wall, they're going to come and they're going to kill him for killing their lord, their baron. And so Luned, she whispers to Owain through the gate, "Hey, I want to be your friend. Take this ring and take the stone. Put the ring on and clutch the stone in your hands, and they won't be able to see you. And once they raise the portcullis, the gate, you could meet me in the town, and I'll know you there when you put your hand on my shoulder." And so Owain says, "Okay." So he puts on the ring and he clutches the stone. When the men of the town come and get him, they don't see anybody in that little area between the two portcullises and that area in the wall. And meanwhile, the gate is open now, so he sneaks out and he looks for Luned, and he puts his hand on her shoulder, and the two of them get to talking, and she takes him to this place that he can go and relax, and because he's just been through a tough battle. So, he relaxes. He gets something to eat. She gives him something to eat. She helps heal his wounds. And then she's got this great idea to talk to the Countess. And she goes to the Countess, who, during the night, they noticed that the Countess was wailing, and all the townspeople were wailing because the Baron had just been killed by this upstart knight who managed to slip past them, get away, so they couldn't kill him. And Owain, through a window, he sees the funeral, this grand funeral the next morning, for the Baron that was just killed, and he sees the wife, the Countess, and he sees how beautiful she is, and he instantly falls in love with her. And Luned says, "Oh, that's a good thing, because I'm going to propose that the Countess marries you, but right now, that's not a good idea. She hates you right now because you killed her husband, but I got a plan." So Luned goes to the Countess after some time of mourning and says to the Countess, you need a new husband to protect you now because your husband is dead. And I have an idea. I'm going to go to King Arthur's court and see if I could find a knight that wants to live here and be your protector of the realm. So Luned is lying, of course. She's not going to King Arthur's place. She's going back to her room in the castle where they all live. And she's going to hang out more with Owain. And after some time passes, she sits around and waits for enough time to make it seem like she went on a long journey and back again. And she takes Owain with her to meet the Countess and says, "Presto, this is going to be your new husband." And the Countess looks him over, and she says, "You're full of shit. This guy doesn't look like he's been on a long travel. I bet this is the guy that killed my husband, the protector of the realm. I wouldn't marry this guy." But Luned eventually cajoles her into accepting him. And, to make a long story short, the two of them do eventually get married. And what happens is that for quite a while, Owain does protect the realm. Every time there's somebody who splashes that fountain water on the marble slab, he comes running out of the castle and fights and defeats all of these intruders. And he does a good job. But then there's one day where King Arthur is very sad, and Gawain asks him, well, I'm not, in this Welsh version, he's not really called Gawain. It's it goes by a Welsh name, which is really hard to figure out how to pronounce. But I'm going by his more common, his English name, Gawain, and he's sad because he misses Owen. So Gawain says, "Oh, I got a good idea. Why don't you, me, and a few of our knights go on a trip? We'll find out where Owen went. We'll see if he's happy where he is, or if he's dead, or if he's taken prisoner in that realm that he went to go visit." Because they figured out that Owen went on this trip because of the story that he heard when they were all hanging out that night. So anyway, so they go and they find the forest, and they find the clearing, and they see the well, and Kay, who's sort of like the announcer of King Arthur, I think he's called the seneschal, who sort of like announces the king, keeps watch over his castle, announces anybody who's coming, and he's the one who takes. He's he's kind of a churl, and he likes to talk smack, but he's not a great knight really. He doesn't have a good sense of chivalry, and he loses a lot of times in jousts and in battles. But he'll make excuses like, "Oh, it was an unfair fight," or some crap like that. So he's the first to splash water on the marble slab, and along comes Owen, and he fights Kay, and he defeats Kay pretty easily. But Kay doesn't take off his helmet, so he doesn't know that he fought Kay, because the two of them know each other. And then all the knights that came with Arthur, they each take a turn to fight Owen. He defeats all of them. But finally, Gawain, who's a great knight, he fights Owen. And the two of them get into a very fierce fight because they're very equally matched. And the two of them what happens is that Gawain gets his helmet knocked off him. I believe that's what happened. And as soon as they see each other, they recognize each other, and they hug, and they're so happy to see each other. And the two of them refuse to admit that they defeated the other. They're like, "No, you're the winner. No, you won the match." So whoever wins a fight has to take the sword of the loser. So Gawain is offering his sword to Owen. Owen is offering his sword to Gawain. And Arthur comes up and says, "Nobody's offering anybody's sword to themselves. I'm taking both your swords." And I'll consider it. I think he said, "I'll consider it a draw, maybe." So then, the troop of Arthur and his knights, they stay with Owen for a while, and they have a big celebration and a big happy reunion. And Arthur wants Owen to come back to his court, and Owen's like, "Well, I can't leave my wife and realm. This is my realm now. However, I could stay with you for maybe 3 months." So he asks his wife, the Countess, "Can I stay with my friends for like 3 months?" And she says, "Okay," but she didn't really like the idea, and with good reason. When Owen winds up going back to King Arthur's court, something happens to him. He loses all memory of his realm, his wife, the Countess. And instead of 3 months, 3 years go by. And what happens is that there's a strange woman that rides into King Arthur's court and starts, cutting down Owen, calling him nothing but a liar and a traitor. "You left your Countess, the Countess of the Fountain, in her realm, and she thought you disappeared on her and died or something. And meanwhile, I see you here with Arthur's court having a good old friggin' time." And Owen, suddenly everything comes back to him in a big rush, and he realizes what he's done. And what he does as a type of penance, he gets on his horse and he goes and he lives in the forest like a savage for a time. In a lot of medieval literature and early Renaissance literature, you have this funny trope about, a hero that makes a big mistake, and a way of overcoming it. They kind of live like a wild person, and they sort of have this break of sanity, and they live with the animals, and they become ragged and dirty, and Owen grew hair all over his body and became kind of like an animal, and he got so weak and malnourished that he was discovered by this other woman, this other countess, who with a magical ointment kind of healed him, uh, and and then he says goodbye to this countess, and he's traveling along because he wants to get back to his realm, where the countess is waiting, his wife, and he hears a noise of animals fighting, and it turns out there was not far from where he was standing with his horse, there was a cliff, and there was a fight between a white lion and a huge snake, and the snake kind of had the lion at the cliff's edge, and the lion tried to get away, but no matter how the lion moved, the serpent was ready to strike. So the lion was kind of in trouble. So Owen felt bad for the lion, so he grabs his sword and he cuts the snake in two. And from then on, the lion, acts like his pet, Owen's pet, and he doesn't leave his side, and he cuddles with him. And when Owen builds a fire, he goes out and he kills a deer and brings it to the fire. And Owen cooks the deer and eats part of it, and most of it he gives to the lion. And then he comes across this. Hi there. And then he comes across this. I'm skipping some parts here, but anyway, he goes on a few adventures with the lion, and what happens is that there's this. He comes across a baron that has Owen as a guest for a while, and the baron is very sad. And Owen says, "What's your problem?" He goes, "Oh, I lost my sons to this giant, this horrible giant, and he won't give them back to me." And so the next day, the giant comes to the baron holding his two sons, and he says, "I'm going to take your two sons with me, unless," I think he wanted his daughter or something. And Owen decides to fight this giant, and of course, he starts fighting with him, and the lion is not going to leave Owen alone with this giant because he was just too strong. And then the giant says, "Hey, this is not a fair fight. This lion is kicking my ass," So Owen, because he's very honorable, he takes the lion, he puts him in the castle, locks him in there. But Owen was taking such a beating, and the lion was crying from inside the castle, and the lion found a way to the high wall, and immediately jumped off the wall. And on his way down, he eviscerated the giant by clawing his body in half, and all his intestines spilled out. And so the giant was killed. Something similar happened. Not long after that. Excuse me. And then what happens is that not long after that, he hears a voice coming out of a cavern, and he finds out it's none other than Lynette, the woman who saved him and tried to and arranged the marriage between him and the Countess. And what happens is that she was imprisoned in this cave because, when Owen never came back, they blamed her for introducing Owen to the Countess. So Owen said, and she said, "And tomorrow they're going to come and kill me because I kept defending you to people who mocked you and said, see what a traitor this Owen was." And they said, "Okay, if you like Owen so much, we're going to put you in this castle for a certain amount of time, and let Owen come and rescue you." So, and the time was up the following day. So Owen went to her, and just at that moment, she was being seized by some people from the town. And they were about to throw her in the fire, and he said, "No, I can't allow this." So he starts fighting them, and sure enough, the lion helps Owen because he hadn't been fighting in a long time. He didn't have the musculature anymore, So the lion started attacking them and hurting them. And they made the same complaint as the giants. They said, hey, this is not a fair fight. You got this lion fighting on your side. So Owen tries to do what he did at the castle. He tried to put the lion away. He put her in the cavern that Lynette was placed in previously, and he walled it up with stones, but that couldn't stop the lion. The lion burst through the stones and killed the two men that were attacking Owen. And anyway, the story's getting a little long, and I got two others I want to tell. So anyway, they eventually, Lynette, the lion, and Owen eventually made themselves back to the town where the Countess is there. And after a long time, it took a long time for her to forgive him, but she eventually forgave him for, I guess he explained to her, you don't understand, I don't know what's wrong with my mind. I totally forgot this whole place, and so the two reconcile, and they decide to leave that kingdom and move with King Arthur and his knights in their realm. And sometimes it's Camelot. In this particular story, it's, I think, Carleon upon Usk. But anyway, that's a minor detail. So the two of them move into Arthur's kingdom. Anyway, that's it for that story. Okay, let me go on to the next one. The next one is actually taken not from Chretien, but it's taken from the masterpiece of Sir Thomas Mallory, Le Morte d'Arthur. Now, this is in 2 volumes. You could get a single volume version, but these 2 volumes, they were kind of cheap. They were, well, I bought these back in the 1990s, and they were about $4 a piece. I did see a single version, but it was like $14. This was back in the nice days where you could walk into a bookstore and spend hours just browsing all the books that you want to read and can't afford or don't have time to read. Me, I didn't care. I bought whatever I wanted to read, and I said, I'll get to them eventually. And when it came to my mythology books, I eventually did. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. So anyway, in this volume, there's several adventures, and one funny little adventure story of Gareth. Now, Gareth was a younger brother to Gawain, and what happens is that Gareth was King Arthur saw a lot of potential in Gareth because he was very brave, and he was willing to go on adventures. And what happened is that one day this woman arrives at King Arthur's court. Her name is Lynette. And Lynette is asking King Arthur if he could lend her a knight because her lady that she serves is being held captive in her own castle and her own realm. Her name is the Lady of Lyonesse, and she's being held by this wicked knight named the Red Knight. And King Arthur calls forth Gareth. Now, Gareth has been spending time in the kitchen because that's where untested knights usually, stay before they're tried and tested. So Gareth was sort of what they call a kitchen knave. And Lynette was not happy, to say the least. She's like, how can you give me this kitchen knave instead of someone who's accomplished and famous? Gareth didn't care. He just went out. She left the court in a huff, and he followed her, and she kept her distance ahead of him. And along the journey, they came across at least 3 different knights. Not the Red Knight, but 3 other knights. And in all 3 cases, the knight tried to stop them from proceeding. So this reminds me of King Arthur and the Holy Grail, where the Black Knight is like, none shall pass, guarding a bridge. Well, that's what these knights were doing. They stopped whoever they felt like stopping. And in each case, Gareth was able to defeat them until they begged for their lives. And in each case, Lynette didn't give him any credit. She was like, "Oh, you got lucky." And she would pick on the knights that Gareth defeated, saying, "I can't believe, do you realize you got defeated by a kitchen knave?" And Gareth didn't care. He just kept going with her. And with every knight he defeated, he allowed them to live only if they promised to go to King Arthur's court and pledge allegiance to King Arthur. And so he proceeded with Lynette until they reached the land of Lyonesse. And there he met the Lady Lyonesse, where she was very beautiful. And she was held captive by this Red Knight. And Gareth fought the Red Knight, defeated him, and freed the Lady Lyonesse. I just like that story because of Lynette and how harsh she was, and the cool way Gareth was able to handle the situation by simply going along with it, because he knew he'd show her up eventually. So that's what you call confidence. Anyway, I'm wondering if I should tell the third story or save it for another video, because this is already 31 minutes long. So if you stayed with me this long, I really appreciate it. So I'll tell the last story of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and I'll tell that next. But in the meantime, I'll have below this video in the description, I'll list the 2 stories I told and the books that you could read them from. Okay, until next time.